Hi everybody, this is LizaHaven, and I came across a really fascinating document from DARPA, and it actually just came out last month, March 2015. It was really recently just released, and nobody has covered this yet, but what it is basically DARPA's plans for the future here in America, and you are going to be floored and amazed at some of the stuff that they are developing for our government and how some of it can impact us in the future. But here's our headline. DARPA just released their future vision for American technology to aid in national security. You won't believe what they're planning on developing for the government. Now, anytime that DARPA speaks up, we know that they work hand in hand with our government here in the U.S., and they brag in doing such. But basically, anytime anything is developed by this agency, we need to take note of it, which is why I wanted to dive through some of their future goals and plans so we can see what we're in for technology-wise. Anyhow, I think the best thing to do now is just dive right in. All right, so here we are at darpa.mil. Let me show you the link. So DARPA's website. And as you can see, this document just was released March 26, 2015. And here we are at the very beginning of April 2015. So as you can see, brand new document. Now, they released this report. It's called Breakthrough Technologies for National Security. And it's a report that's released every other year. So they don't do it yearly, but every other year. And this is why we need to read through this thing and say, okay, what are these advancements that they're going to be focusing on in the future, and take note of it. So this is why I want to bring it to you today. That and the fact that they work with our government and military. So let's go ahead and dive straight into that document. Okay, so here we are on the actual document, Breakthrough Technologies for National Security, and as you can see, DARPA's got their stamp, and this was put together towards the end of March 2015. Now again, the entire purpose for this particular report was so that DARPA can target specific research projects for the future that they're going to be working on for the next 2 years. Remember, this report is put out every other year. So this is kind of their goal for the next couple of years, and we're going to find some pretty interesting things on this document. Now, what you're looking at here is basically their opening letter, where they are thanking the support not only from Congress here, but also from the White House and from the Defense Department leadership, military services, and their partners in science and technological communities, engineers, universities, and whatnot. As you can see, there is support from all aspects of our government and university in order to do this, and they literally work with the government on tons of projects and specifically for the government. That's not even a question that needs to be addressed there, but I wanted to first and foremost show you that. Now, here is basically their very first page here at the bottom. And it says they have been for more than 50 years, they have been researching and had an enduring mission. And that mission is to make investments in breakthrough technologies in order to aid our national security. And we're talking both domestic and international security wise. And right here is another admittance, and let me just highlight it, that they work with innovators inside of the government and also outside of the government. And if you're still not convinced, it also says here that it works with an innovation ecosystem that includes academic, corporate, and governmental partners. So they're working with lobbyists, big corporations, governments, a wide variety of organizations in order to come to these technological feats. Now, it goes on to say in paragraph 3, this is basically a full-fledged admittance of the chaos that we are experiencing here in America. But it says the world is experiencing some deeply disturbing technical, economical, and geopolitical shifts that pose potential threats to U.S. preeminence, or basically our superiority and stability. Let's pause right there. We know that the government continually denies our economic state, but here is a company that works with the government government, and they're admitting it. But it goes on to say these dual trends of unprecedented opportunities and simmering menace, and how they can be expected to affect U.S. national security needs a decade and more from now, deeply inform DARPA's most recent determination of its strategic priorities for the next several years. Now, one thing that I also want to point out here is it says these particular basically threats, your technological, economic, and geopolitical shifts, are expected to hit or mess with our national security within a decade or more from now. So they're basically saying, look, we need to make some technologies because this stuff is going to happen. Our guess is in a decade or more from now. So there is an admittance from DARPA about the state of our country, basically. Now, most of you are also probably aware of the New World Order. I know I talk about that a lot in my videos, but what I want to show you is their entire goal is a global agenda. It's not just here in America, it's globally. And they want everyone to start thinking global-minded. This is your New World Order mentality, even right here on DARPA's plans for the next 2 years. So basically there's your New World Order link in there. Now moving on to page 2 here, it has some interesting stuff, and here is where they start addressing social media issues and how it's a problem. It says communication capabilities too have undergone radical democratization in recent years, making it exceedingly easy through social media and other channels for otherwise modest undercurrents of conflict or misinformation to blossom into deadly crisis. Now, what you're seeing there is basically freedom of information that we have on the internet is basically a problem. That is how I am reading that. Our communication is getting to be an issue, and social media, that's what it is. It's media online and things like that, and how basically, as you're going to see later in the document, how they have some specific fixes for that type of thing. So keep that in mind as we go. This is part of the problem they want to fix for the next year. But here in this next section, it goes on to list a few of the challenges that they encounter. This is one of the challenges, is misinformation through media online. Could that later could I later project and say, hey, maybe reporters like me, they don't want online? Who knows? It could go a lot of different ways. But here's some other challenges that they inquire and talk about. They say terrorist groups and other non-state actors, they pose a risk because of, they could cause lots of different things. There's nuclear proliferation and concerns such as it states here above. But it goes on to say that still other challenges have their roots in global social, economic, and environmental trends that are affecting governments and population worldwide. Here's what they include in regards to the demographic shifts, such as population growth. This is a common thread that I see in a lot of government documents. They're consistently attacking that population growth because they want to bring us down. And if you've read anything about the Georgia Guidestones, they want to bring it way down to over, I believe, 500 million persons. That's a pretty big leap. But it also talks about urbanization in developing countries and the aging of populations in developing countries. Religious, there is another target there, and cultural shifts, being that those are issues and problems. Religion has repeatedly been marked as a problem, but here it is on DARPA marked as an issue, including the rise of violent extremism. They're talking domestic, they're talking international, and we already know what violent extremism is, according to the right-wing extremist document put out by Janet Napolitano a few years ago. This specifically labels Christians, Catholics, constitutionalists, patriots, and veterans all as part of your violent extremists or violent right-wing extremists. So it's definitely on there as an issue. It goes on to say resource imbalances and shortages. We're seeing this in California with droughts and all the stuff that's going on with there, and the stuff that HAARP is causing, including energy sources and problems with our fresh water. Fukushima. Okay, these are things that we are seeing that they're not admitting on other levels. They go on to say climate changing, sea level rising, droughts and floods, and concern about impacts to our infrastructure and agriculture. So, and it also lists animal pandemics and other health risks. So these are the problems, and economic depletion. These are the problems here, social unrest, missed a few, that they're listing as that they're trying to target, I guess, with technologies. But there's your admittance of some of the things that are happening now. So with this in mind, let's move on down to page 4 here, where it says, rethink complex military systems. Now, here is some of the things that they're doing to help aid with technology in order to combat some of that stuff, or aid in national security. The first one is assuring dominance of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's basically your, upgrading or working on your communications through radar and electronic warfare. The next thing is improving position, navigation, and timing without GPS. And I believe they're thinking of doing this through satellites and whatnot, as you can see here. Now, maintaining air superiority in contested environments, that's another one. There's also leading the world in advanced hypersonics. Basically, they want to develop unprecedented hypersonic capabilities to prove new U.S. response options and to prevent peer adversity, strategic surprise. Asserting a robust capability in space. This basically includes creating, or through means of creating, space plane systems which have the potential to enable launch of satellites from virtually anywhere within just a 24 hours notice. That's pretty huge there. And then there's enhancing maritime agility. That one is actually pretty interesting. If you have time, pause it and read it. Exerting control on the ground. Some of the things they are doing there, and augmenting defense against terrorism. Now, this one's pretty huge, I think, so I'm going to read that. Small-scale terrorist actions can have outsized impacts, demanding technologies able to detect the earliest evidence of a planned attack. In response to this challenge, DARPA is developing advanced capabilities to counter new types of mass terrorist threats in the radiological, cyber, and life science domains. Among other approaches, it is developing and testing networked, mobile, and cost-effective nuclear and radiological weapons detectors that can easily, this is the key word, be deployed to provide real-time surveillance over city-scale areas. So here is where they're talking about specifically monitoring quote-unquote terrorists, which the term of terrorist isn't just your jihadist Islamic extremist. It's Christians, it's Mormons, it's Jews, it's everyone that can possibly be listed. Any enemy of the government is on that terrorist list. And here they're talking about creating some pretty hefty duty devices that can be used to survey over a city in an entire area. So that's some pretty hefty stuff. And I wouldn't be so worried about this stuff if they weren't listing constitutionalists, patriots, and Christians as terrorists. But the truth of the matter is that is exactly what they have done and are doing. All right, so moving on, master the information explosion. Now, before I get into that section, I want to read this, the societal implications of new technologies. Now, what this actually is basically a disclaimer from DARPA as to how they're going to start stealing all our private information. Because, as I said earlier, up here, one of their main issues is the fact that there is social media, and social media, where is it? Okay. Social media is a problem because of all the misinformation out there. Now, because of this issue here, They are creating technology that basically can global surveillance us on a mass scale. This is pretty huge. But this is their disclaimer for that. It says, because DARPA's programs push the leading edge of technology, they are sometimes society's first notable encounter with the societal dilemmas associated with new capabilities. DARPA pursues these technologies because of their promise, and the agency is committed to exploring domains that could leave the nation vulnerable if not pursued. But DARPA's leadership and team members also understand that in this pursuit, the agency's work will at times raise ethical questions, legal questions, security or policy questions that cannot and should not go under-addressed. Agreed. But they are going non-addressed. What are the privacy considerations in using public data to identify security threats? Good question. But this is exactly what they're doing. And under what conditions might it be justifiable to develop and test technologies that can infer such private or personal matters as intention or attitude or trustworthiness? Exactly. How can society guard against the misuse of new synthetic biological capabilities, including intentional mischief and residential release? Well, here's what they say in response. You're going to love this. In dealing with issues such as these, DARPA's job is twofold. First, the agency must be fearless about the exploring of new technologies and their capabilities. This is their core function, and the nation is best served if DARPA pushes critical frontiers ahead of its adversaries. Pause. Obviously, they don't care if it crosses ethical, legal, security, or privacy lines. That's their core function, to work in that way, and that's the way they're going to do it. Isn't that great? But it also goes on to say, at the same time, they are committed to addressing the broader societal questions. So we'll answer your questions raised by its work and engaging those in relevant communities of expertise to provide context and perspective for consideration. And they continue to say that they will work within the law. Well, the law says, it doesn't say much or it doesn't mean much, because they go and steal all our information anyway. And the law, according to things like the NDAA and the Patriot Act, make it legal for them to monitor everything you say and do. Okay, this is why DARPA is basically saying, tough luck. It's their core function and we're going to do it. We'll address your questions as they arise. So that's your response right there from DARPA and their disclaimer. And don't worry, they're going to work within the law, which says, according to the Patriot Act, they can monitor everyone and anyone if they suspect you're a terrorist. And who is a terrorist? Patriots, Christians, veterans, and the like. So there that is. Wonderful. Well, at least they admit it. So master the information explosion. Here I found a lot of stuff. Here they just talk about how much information is uploaded to things like YouTube every single day. And they're talking about domestically here. This is what it is. And how they need to go about a better way of finding a better way to basically put all our information together and monitor everything through your NSA kind of stuff. But it is DARPA that is making the technology in order to do this. And they're going to take our data and track our data without recourse. Deriving meaning from big data. I want to read this section because I do find it interesting. Interestingly, the bottleneck to wise decision-making is not a lack of data, but a lack of capacity to identify and understand the most important data. Toward this end, DARPA is developing novel approaches to deriving insights from massive data sets and to mapping behavior patterns at scale, including algorithms to quickly identify anomalous threat-related behaviors of systems, individuals, and even groups. Let's pause right there. Basically, they're talking about making technology where they can monitor behavior patterns through things you post and say and do and respond to on the internet, in order that they can label you a threat or not a threat, or they can label you as part of an individual or part of a group. I don't know about you, but I don't want a label put on myself. I've never done anything violent, nor will I ever do anything violent. I'm a pretty calm girl. And here they are saying, because I relate to these people, or I have these mindsets, or I have these beliefs, which will be pasted upon our heads that they're going to put us into certain groups or categories or certain patterns of behaviors that we could expect. I'm thinking Minority Report here. You're guilty of a crime before you've actually done it. This is the idea behind it. At least that is what I'm gathering from this. It's crazy, folks, but it is out there. Now, it goes on to say the agency is also developing technologies to provide comprehensive awareness and understanding of the cyber battle space, automated computational capabilities to detect hidden casual relationships, so it can detect those things, search technology for discover, organization, and presentation of domain-specific content, software to detect and even classify, measure, and track the spread of certain ideals and concepts on social media. That's your Facebook, your YouTube, your Twitter, your any kind of media that is out there. And it says, and methods for automating the analysis of photos and videos. DARPA's goal is to enable the operational user of information with powerful big data tools. Why do they need powerful big data tools? That's because they have a buttload of data that they are collecting on every one of us and, you know, even on other countries, I would assume. But these are the kinds of things that can be used against us. This is a big red flag in my book. And if, again, we weren't targeted as terrorists, then it wouldn't be such an issue. But we are. We really, really are. And it is an issue anyway, because I want my privacy. We are welcome to our privacy, regardless of that. I want my privacy. It is an issue. So I changed that. I mean, it is an issue, period. Because I need my privacy and you need your privacy. And this is stealing that away. So anyway, that's a little upsetting, but that's one part that my, red flag goes up. Here's the other thing, building trust into information systems. Basically, they're developing technologies to ensure that the data that they gather can be made with trustworthy. Like they want to make sure the information they're gathering on you is correct. So moving on, this next part is pretty interesting. Harnessing biology as technology. Now we all know. All right, so moving on, here is another fascinating part. Harnessing biology as technology. And biology is basically the study of life and living organisms. And they're talking about using our life forms basically as technology. This screams a transhumanism type of mindset here. And here's just a few things that they are doing in order to, accelerate the biology as technology. And here's the first one, accelerating process in synthetic biology. And this says, DARPA is developing technologies to harness biology's synthetic and functional capabilities with the goal of creating revolutionary bio-based manufacturing platforms that can enable new production paradigms and create materials with novel properties. Outpacing infectious disease. This is what they're doing to combat pandemics and things like that. And then there's this, mastering new neurotechnologies. This one is pretty huge. And there's lots of controversies with this, but recent advances in microelectronics, information science, and neuroscience are enabling the development of novel therapies to accelerate recovery in a range of energies, and in the long run, new approaches to optimizing human performance. In other words, how can biotechnology help the human performance? And let me just pause right there before I even move on. We know that DARPA is creating or attempting to create things where they can make night vision possible for our soldiers, basically making them into some type of super soldier using biotechnology or that can change how they see things, giving them certain things that we can get from animals I'm trying to explain that the best way I can, but they're basically using biotechnology to make superhumans. How can we change DNA? How can we modify this or that in a human in order to accomplish a goal that would make them better soldiers? And these are problems. These are things that they're doing. And here is also another one, and it goes on to say that among the agency's goals in domain are implantable neuro interfaces for human clinical use to bridge gaps in the injured brain. Basically, this is your brain chip. We've heard a lot about this lately, but here they're talking about continuing on to do it. And, I understand, brain chips or whatever to help patients who are sick and therapeutic reasons. I get it, but I really do. And that's cool. But when it crosses the line is when they put these chips, and it can easily be turned into a bad thing and changed to give you certain ideas or certain, things that they want you to do based off of a brain chip. There's a lots of problems that can go wrong with that. I just can't see getting something implanted in my head saying and giving us commands on things to do. There's just so many problems there. But obviously this is something, as you can see here, they are working hardcore on, and something that pushes a little red flag for me as well, because there's ways that can go bad. Now, moving on, here's just a few other things to expand the technological frontier: applying deep mathematics, inventing chemistry's process and materials, harnessing quantum physics. Pretty big there. And this next section is, I didn't find too much in it. Now, moving on to page 13, exploiting photo and video images. Volumes of images collected in support of surveillance and reconnaissance efforts, such as photo and video albums stored on laptop computers that are confiscated from insurgents during DoD operations, are growing at such a rate that unassisted analysis cannot keep up with demand for interpretation. DARPA has developed and transitioned to relevant agencies several technologies that are enhancing analysis productivity, including technology that searches imagery and video archives for persons, objects, events, and activities of interest, novel interfaces to support live video exploitation, and the capability to track all movers in a dynamic field of view. I think that is pretty blunt. And that sends up, again, a lot of red flags. They want to monitor your movement. They want to monitor what you can and can't, what you're doing on the internet, what you're doing through videos, what you're doing all over the place. And this is basically a goal. Let's make it to where they're able to handle large volumes of data. Why do they need to handle large volumes of data? Because they're gathering it on all of us. So there that is. And I understand if you're gathering it on real terrorists, but that's not the case. We all know that they gather it on a lot of us. We know this was leaked by Edward Snowden about the NSA leaks and whatnot. They're definitely gathering it on us all. Now here on page 14, it expands on that. It says military intelligence analysis face the monumental and escalating task of deriving means from massive volumes of complex data collected from multiple diverse sources, including physical sensors, human contacts, and contextual databases. So obviously, again, they're collecting data on us all, and I just kind of wanted to show you that as well. Now, here's just some other things that are interesting they're creating here. We have creating deep ocean satellites. That's, speaking of putting satellites in our actual ocean, or types of that, I should say. Avoiding collisions in orbit, revolutionizing prosthetics. This next section is on technologies that have shaped our world, and I'm just going to skip over that. And scrolling on, this is all the way down to page 34, but here is success stories on artificial intelligence. We all know that goes pretty deep, and they can take that pretty deep. And considering to the transhumanist view, eventually they want to merge man and machine. So this is a great read as well, but these are things that they're going to continue to work on, is your artificial intelligence. And in addition to that, this one was also interesting, and these are your driverless cars that you can see in Hollywood style types of movies, but they're definitely making progression there. And, you know, lots of red flags can go up in regards to AI and driverless cars, but that's just also some of the things that they are going to be expanding on and working on. And these are basically their technological feats, and they brag about them dearly. Anyhow, I wanted to bring you guys the latest on this entire document. Like I said, when they put these out every other year, I want to find out, hey, is there anything imperative on this that we need to know about? And it seems like for this 2015 year that basically their biggest thing was surveillance of the populace. And I think this goes well with what is going on with Jade Helm. We know that's an 8-week training course that they're going to be out in public. Also, the presidential task force document of the 21st century was put out by the president, who created this task force to basically make it so police officers are more in our communities. So we're seeing not only military, but police in our communities, martial law kind of type stuff that they're planning for. And here we also see they're planning on gathering tons of our data through DARPA, or DARPA creating that technology that giving them ability to better sort through everything. And all of this adds up. When you put it all together, it paints a picture of something going on. When we have military planning, we have police planning, and here we have DARPA creating the technology in order so that they can do mass surveillance. And we also know through internment and resettlement document, that's the FEMA camp document. We also have the right-wing extremists document. If you guys don't know any of these, look through my past YouTubes, they're on there. But all these documents scream preparation for something huge ahead. But they're basically gathering data on all of us, and it's going to be used for or against us at some point. I would imagine against. Anyhow, I wanted to bring you the latest. This is LizaHaven signing off.